Okay. I think I find something very interesting in the three of your various contributions to this conversation, and is that we're moving from a system that has been very extractive for a very long period of time, and we're trying to get into a system that actually works for everybody. And the real reason is because we face the same problems. And the problems are actually hurting our fiscal space to a point where we cannot meet critical demands that either contribute to human development, contribute to national development, and even just contribute to financial development in general. And this is intersecting with critical issues that are happening right now, from the debt crisis to the climate crisis, and so many other intersecting issues that we need to think about. But very interesting in your conversation, Alan, the global south and the global north are actually facing similar problems. So it simply means that we actually have to find some kind of grounding to move from a system that does only works for one side and find one where each and every one of us is able to benefit from the entire system. Now, I want us to shift gears a little bit to what just happened over the last couple of days, and that is the third intergovernmental negotiation sessions for the UN Tax Convention, which has actually happened in African soil for the first time. And before we even get into the nitty-gritties, I just want to hear what was the most interesting part of these negotiations for you. I don't know who exactly to start with, but I'm thinking of picking Riva first and then
Ladies
Kwesi.
first.
We can do ladies first. So Riva, tell us what has been interesting for you from this process and why?
I think I'm still processing what's happened. I think so much happened. I'm not sure what to be my takeaways. I mean, definitely what was frustrating was the unnecessary complication. Someone shared a joke and said, in Germany, we have a joke that says, why make things simple when you can complicate things? And I think that just sums up everything. It sums up the tax process. It sums up, all these negotiations with our creditors and international financial institutions. They like to keep things high level. That's something that we kept hearing, like, let's keep this high level, let's keep these high level principles, let's deal with that in protocols, let's and so if we're just keeping things high level, we'll end up with this skeleton, a non-meaningful, non-operational convention that does nothing. And I think my biggest takeaway was that frustration. I think Alan said it very, very clearly. These things are very clear. They're very, easy to see. Like, the solutions are here. Let's just allocate taxing rights. Let's cooperate all together. Let's be transparent about, let's share information, share data. It's, I mean, I think to everyone it seems very obvious, but somehow at the negotiations, we just got tied up in technicalities and calls for high level principles. Yeah, for me that was my biggest takeaway and frustration.
Okay, Kwesi, how
Well,
about you?
so for me, quite a number of things, but I'll try and stick to one. But just to hark back to the earlier segment of our conversation, I mean, remember that we're dealing with, as I think Alan or Riva said, we're dealing with power asymmetry. Essentially, we're trying to reorder. And the thing is that there's been a group that's been the dominant force all around all these centuries. And so for me, going into the conversation, it was obvious that there'll be a lot of resistance and pushback. And of course, as expected, that was not disappointing. But for me, what really I thought stood out was the united front that Africa presented. I mean, we had by far the largest representation from the continent, and they spoke with a single voice, and they pushed back each time. And not only that, they spoke calmly, they spoke intelligently, and they negotiated, I mean, unlike any other forum we've seen. And that, for me, I think it's my takeaway, that Africa remains united around this fight. And I think that we definitely would win this fight. There is no way any other group can kind of dissuade us from our position. And I think it's only fair to, and I'm not trying to moralize this, but I think that Africa has been shortchanged for far too long. I mean, the extractivism that Alan talked about, inherently, people are scheming to continue to extract from here without contributing their fair share to the continent's development. I think that we've come to an era where we say we're not going to take that anymore. And I think the Africa group really represented us really well. I mean, not a single group anywhere in the world came together as the Africa group. And so I think that our negotiators are doing a good job. And I just hope that our governments, our capitals will continue to give them the support they need. And then also, of course, the support that civil society has been providing would remain available so that, our negotiators can get the best deal we possibly can secure from. This obviously is going to be a long drawn out, and I'm not under any illusion that this fight is going to be, a walk in a park. It's going to be a big fight. Also because the context is particularly important. We're seeing a shift and a certain emergence of multipolarity. And so there's a redistribution of not just simply economic, but also political power. And this puzzle fits perfectly into it. And so the resistance is going to come. And so the united front presented by our negotiators is absolutely necessary. And I think we need more of that. And we need more of a few countries were absent. I think we need all African countries to be represented in the room come February when we move to the next phase of the negotiations.
Okay, very interesting. Alan, do you share the same sentiment?
Yeah, actually, I think basically most of what I thought I would say has been said, and maybe to just build on the expectation that there would be resistance. I think it's something that the African group prepared for, the African civil society prepared for. If you remember, during the terms of reference, almost the entire EU abstained, so they weren't for, they weren't against, and that was because they didn't get most of the things that they had wanted to get within the system. And again, like Kwesi said, for them, the system still works as they intend to. River said we still have references and we had them, existing mechanisms. Let us make this more efficient and more effective. And the question is, who has been making it not to be efficient and effective? Yeah, but I think for me, to add on what has been said, is having a framework, a convention that we can actually also link to the very many things that have been happening. And it was, for me, what was very interesting is that it was happening as COP was also happening in Belém. And basically, we're having the same conversation, two faces of the same coin. As people in Belém were discussing climate finance, doing away with promises that, are on the whims of certain individuals and the goodwill and the magnanimity of certain countries. We were here discussing the potential solutions. We don't have to wait for people to commit certain resources. We don't have to be at the mercy of a certain country saying, this year I'm in this process. Next year, when they get a new administration, they are not in the process. The other year, when another administration comes, and those are countries that you're looking at for leadership and all that. So I think that by these processes also happening at the same time, I think it was sort of, I don't know if it's symbolic or if it was now coming to the realities of our time, that almost all our issues, I think now it's becoming more in focus that they are related. And for me, I think the big takeaway is that we also, for the constituents where I've come from, that we had more stakeholders coming in to also engage. Initially, when you look at one of the contentious issues around capacity building, if you looked at the people that were in the room, there was so much capacity from civil society, academia, young people, activists. And they were giving the support that the countries needed to do the work that is supposed to be done during this process. So for me, I think that's indicative. And of course, when discussions were around it being so expensive, for example, to have all these negotiations in New York, one of the most expensive cities in the world. And it came and countries were like, okay, so we could have, there are different UN campuses or UN headquarters in different continents. Why don't we democratize that sort of process? And we've seen it that for the first time we have more civil society participating, more young people participating, more think tanks, more countries themselves participating. And we believe, like Wesley said, if we maintain the course, I think we will get where we want to get to. It may take time. Of course, there's going to be pushback, but at least we know what is at stake. We know, of course, for us, we want to look at this as a life or death matter. I was telling someone that for us in the tropics, we have almost everything handed to us. The sun is good, the water is there, and all that, yes. But for a country where they won't get their coltan to power their batteries in winter, they die. So for them, it's a life and death matter. They have to extract all the value they can. If they don't, they die. Literally, they die. So I think even as those should be the states, those should be the stakes that we need to get resources. It cannot be for a few people to prosper in a century where there is abundance of everything. So yeah, I think I'm hopeful. I think I'm hopeful for the process. It may take time, but systems change takes time. So yes.
Can I also say I'm hopeful? Because I shared frustrations and you shared hope and you shared hope. So I'm also hopeful. I mean, because we've been in this space since before, there was a UN tax, and we just, we were saying, yeah, UN tax body, global tax body now. And at the time it was very much a pipe dream. It didn't seem real. And even now it doesn't seem real that this is happening. So like, even as, it's like a marathon, like even as you win some, you lose some, and it evolves over time. I think the biggest encouraging thing is that it's actually happening.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't want you to withdraw that, because I mean, it was frustrating, particularly because, for example, the UN has defined what IFF is. The World Bank has defined it, IMF has defined, African Union has defined what IFF is. And you had some of the northern negotiators asking
what are IFFs?
I mean, you can see that for some, it was just a deliberate effort to frustrate the process. And so I come back to the thing that, of course, that phase of the conversation was very disturbing, given that this is supposed to be a serious space for serious negotiations. But I think the Global South, negotiators, the Africa Group, India, China, Bangladesh, all took it in their stride. And I think that they responded really, again, I mean, I think the response was tough, but then also they kept us on track. So they were not distracted. And I thought that was smart. They did not fall, because that was a trap to get into a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And basically they skirted around that. And I thought that was a smart move. But I think for me, frankly, I think that we're on track. And I'm looking forward to February, the next round of the negotiations. I think we can expect more fireworks, given what we've seen in Nairobi.
Yes.